Facciarecci is not here. This is Gavin. He he usually does these later. I think he's working. And what's your thoughts on Buddhism? So I have more thoughts on Buddhism than I have on uh, I guess, Buddhism. I have I have what I don't like about Buddhism, and then I have a lot of things that I like about Buddhism. And so, if you're talking to me, yeah, in general, I guess we should start with what you like. Um, Buddhism. I like the practices that allow you to train yourself to have self control, allow you to be at peace, to find peace. Another word is equanimity. Um, to be able to detach, to find, to because when we don't have peace and equanimity, we are it's because of our attachments. And um, I like the meditation. So for me to be with God, to be with the best spirit, like I believe in spirits, to possess the best spirit possible, it requires a kind of meditation and self control. And so there's a lot of good things in Buddhism with regard to doing that. The um, but with everything, you can um, there's dangers, right? So the thing that concerns me um, about Buddhism is the lack of attachment. So I think it's good to be able to detach, but I also think it's good to seek out that which is most important. So I am a I've been writing software since 2008. Um, I graduated in 2008 with a degree in electrical and computer engineering and wrote software up until January of this year. And now I am what is called a site reliability engineer. But it's only a name because I don't get to do a lot of engineering yet as a site reliability engineer. And so I'm more like an evangelist for reliability. Um, and I've had some success with that. It has forced me into learning how to cooperate with other people and coordinate with other people and motivate other people into um, behaving in the ways which I think is best. So that's been a very good practice this year for me. And I'm good at it. Like, I'm pretty good at being tossed into a new area of study and just learning on my own. I'm not the best at that, but I'm pretty good at it. It would be great if I had a mentor. I like this style of having a mentor too to help you. But it's interesting you mentioned Buddhism because the thing that's on my mind is like so I will I can be perceived I think the wrong way by other people. So there's a part of me right now that um, you know kind of wants to cry, and so and it's because I invite people to tell me what they think honestly. And so when people tell you what they think, it's not going to be right, especially if they're judging you. And I think it's important for us to try to get to know, the truth. So if I tell you you don't understand me, then that might be true. Especially, I guess what I'm thinking is that when people normally become defensive, it's, I'll say things in which will cause people to ignore me or ban me. It happens, and I've had to work through this in the last year. Trying to encourage people to do what I think is good. But people don't respond well to criticism, and all people, including myself, right? I can feel it. So maybe you saw some tears, or the beginning of tears. But I'm expressing how I feel with words instead of those tears. Or that's what I'm trying to do. Yeah, and so I think that there can be confusion. So my capacity to detach from and go into a kind of what I've called like an agnostic state, where I'm here and now, being with God and the Holy Spirit, and receiving a criticism and even things that people might call mean. And when I receive it, I'm reminded of Thich Nhat Hanh, right? So Thich Nhat Hanh can talk about taking that thing that's inside of you, and you hold it like a baby, right? If it's the sadness or the anger or whatever it is, you hold it like a baby. You don't want to just get rid of it, but you have to be delicate with it, because you can do terrible things. And I've done things because of emotions that I'm not proud of, and so I've worked on learning self-control. And I think that self-control can be confused by others as having no emotions, something like that. Criticism is hard for many people, yes. It's hard to give criticism and receive criticism. What's hard for me is the criticism that seems, and this is a good word, it seems. What's hard for me is the criticism that seems like it is not perceiving the truth about who I am, right? So if someone criticizes kind of my character and it doesn't mesh with how I perceive my own character, then that's the kind of the most offensive, like, and I try not to be offended, but that's the most offensive kind of criticism. And so sometimes I have to adjust my perception of my own character, and I've done that throughout my life. And sometimes I have to see that the other person's perception of my character is wrong, right? And so it's tough to go through that. Are you a Christian? Honestly, giving it is harder. Giving, yeah. So I read Never Split the Difference. I recommend it. It's the FBI negotiator, Voss, I think is his last name. Yeah, giving it is difficult. You can start off with a criticism. Well, there's all kinds of ways. I'm not going to try to teach it. I am not an expert. What's funny is that communication is in my mind, it's my biggest weakness. And I think it's related to my OCD. And I'll start, like, I can pay attention and listen well, but I can also ignore people well, right? This ability to focus is a double-edged sword. And so sometimes my communication can ignore the audience. And that's when my communication fails. But I had success the other day with it. I actually called someone out in a meeting because his communication was not being productive. And I was able to say, okay, that's not productive. Let's do this. It depends which person critiques you. It does for most people it might not for me. Like I ask my children for criticism. I'll take criticism from strangers, but I think it does for most people, and that's part of the problem. Like if I try to provide criticism so there's hierarchies. There's like real hierarchies inside of a business, and then there's hierarchies like on YouTube in this little corner. And so if for me, I try not to see people through these hierarchies, um, as far as their ability to provide some type of feedback that's valuable. But a lot of times people can get sucked into, can be possessed by, their idea of where they are in a hierarchy above or below others in some regard. And so they will disregard criticism if it comes from the wrong person. So I have used a technique to try to get people who are in a different place in the hierarchy to say the thing that I wish I could say, but the listener does not have ears for me. But so this is true, but I like what Jacob was saying in last night's chatting about good faith. There's some things that are true, but you wish they weren't true, right? So yeah, generally, like this is true. It's not true for all people, and it probably shouldn't be true, if we're actually trying to progress toward what is ideal. If they aren't qualified to criticize you, then it's an issue. That's a perception thing. So, we might be wrong in our estimate of other people's qualifications. And so, like when I talk to my children, I say, and by the way, there's a StreamYard link up at the top of the chat. I'll ask my children, the other day I asked them, what could I have done better today? And I got different answers from my children, 7-year-old and a 4-year-old. I didn't ask my 2-year-old. And it had something to do with they wanted more of my attention. This happened to be something my wife was telling me as well. And so I had 3 sources, including my children, basically saying they would have liked me to have given more attention to them during the day. And so it's important. But we have to be careful about our estimate of who is qualified to do what, because that's just it's a model of hierarchies in our mind, and all models are wrong and some are useful. But yeah, my main point, I think that the harm and my tendency to have self-control is that I might come off as someone who doesn't have feelings, right? I might come off as someone, and then there's actual diagnosis for people who don't have feelings. So there is a risk in everything. I appreciate the questions. I appreciate the comments, Krish. I don't like to just ramble without some type of feedback. I actually perform much better when I get feedback from other people. And I try to lead by example. Like, I think receiving feedback from other people is important. And so I try to treat it like as sacred, and with the hope that other people will treat my feedback in a similar way, so they kind of do unto others. Try to do that. I make mistakes. Also, you can end up with broken relationships, and there's a question of, well, how do you repair that broken relationship? Someone has a perspective of, there's people in the world who have a perspective of me that is not right, and it's because I did some things that caused them to view me that way for whatever reasons, and then I can learn and grow and change. And is the relationship over? So redemption, it's nice to have redemption. It's nice to have a path for growth. So I also try to do that. I try to allow others the opportunity to to show who they are now. And that's a double-edged sword as well, because, you know, a lot of people don't change very much. So you could end up treating someone like, oh, maybe they are someone who has grown a lot. And if you just go into it like that, you could say something wrong that they aren't ready for. And if you had paid attention to who they were previously, you would have known they aren't ready for that. So it's challenging trying to be a person who learns and grows and changes and has self-control and listens to feedback while providing opportunity for others to do the same, while trying to lead by example. Making mistakes along the way. There's a link at the top. Y'all are welcome to come in. Got 9 viewers. I'll mention the convective heat engine. In this little corner of the internet, people like to talk about theology, and I liked what Chad had to say last night. I think the idea that Chad had resonates with me, that a lot of the talk about theology, the debate about, I would even call it our stories, doesn't seem productive. So it happens a lot. For some reason, a lot of people find this kind of stuff interesting. But hey, Hero. This must be someone from my channel. Yeah, I'm streaming to my YouTube channel and Jacob's YouTube channel and Jacob's Twitch. And my YouTube channel is called Hero LFG. I was arrogant, thought myself something of a hero, and then realized how important a team is. And so that's when I became Hero LFG and became less arrogant. I'm still arrogant. Another word for arrogant is confident. So you can always use a different label to describe some characteristic. Very interesting. Peace. That's the greeting. Is that Spock? What does that mean? Spock's greeting? I put out a video the other day about the Shield of David. The idea was that, there's a triangle. There it is. And that's what comes to mind when I think of a competence hierarchy. I wonder if that's what comes to mind. And I wonder if that's what comes to mind to others when you hear the mouth noise is competence hierarchy or hierarchy. Do you imagine a pyramid? It's like the food pyramid, something like that. There's the camera. I need to pay attention. And so the Shield of David is, a competence hierarchy with an inverted one on top of it. And I like that because it's something I've known for a long time now, which has helped me be less arrogant, is that our strengths come with weaknesses. Like there's always trade-offs. Live long and prosper. We want what's best for you. So yeah, I think it's good as individuals to, if you see yourself as being good at something and having a strength, which is good to be aware of, don't be blind to the weakness that is connected to your strength. Because from what I can tell, there's always a weakness that is connected to your strength. There's always at least one. Now, there's probably more than one, but you should at least be able to find the main one, the big one. And then when you talk to other people, you can remember that as well. And this is what helps us be able to avoid forming these hierarchies in our mind that are just wrong models, wrong perceptions, right? Where we look down on other people. Because you should not be looking down on other people with regard to everything. This is where Jacob and I might disagree, actually. The weakness is consuming me at the moment. Kind of forgot the strength. Oh, no. The weakness. Well, if you tell me your weakness, I might be able to point at what is good with that. This is actually what I do. If I just notice people's weakness, I have been able to say, what does that weakness help them to be good at? So you can even think about like a psychological disorders or disabilities. And I am sure that for every disability, everything that the experts tell you is a disability, there is something connected to it that is also a strength. So if you want to share your weakness, your disability, I can try to shine light on the corresponding strength. So I give it a shot. Yeah, sometimes I'm too quick to point at the mistakes. And so another thing about that Shield of David icon is to say that weakness is going to be combined with a strength, and make sure you see both. Don't just see one, or it's definitely imbalanced and wrong. The weakness is consuming me. Well, if you don't want to share your weakness, that's where the Buddhism topic might help. To be able to empty your mind. It's a good practice, the meditation practice. To just appreciate the breath. Like I had a friend who had Wilson's disease, and he's dead. His name was Brandon Clark. And if you are a doctor who is aware of Wilson's disease, you may have actually read about Brandon Clark as a case study. Those are tears, but yeah, he was in a coma for a while, and when he came out, I think he told his sister, he's like, you don't understand how amazing it is to just breathe. And then he lived for like a few more months after that. He got to get out of the hospital and come over to my house, and we hung out. But he ended up getting sick and dying because he got a no, wasn't a heart transplant. Was it a kidney? It was a transplant, organ transplant. You have to take this medicine that suppresses your immune system so that your immune system does not reject the organ. And then suppressing your immune system makes you vulnerable to sickness. And this was all, pre-COVID. I mean, this kind of issue has always been an issue for people who have a compromised immune system. So total lack of confidence in knowing. Total lack of confidence in knowing. Seems like that would make you impressionable, which is a double-edged sword, right? When you're impressionable, you can learn from others, but you can also be persuaded by others in the wrong direction. So some people don't learn easily, right? And that would be, so like you can learn from others and just absorb and get impressed upon by others too easily. And you can be someone who resists changing, right? Both extremes are very dangerous. And so, you can be on one extreme or the other. And so you know which way to work. So what that means, you can use labels. You can say, well, you're here, you're listening. Are you a good listener? Right? Because oftentimes it's our confidence and our knowing which causes us to not listen to others. So as someone who has been plagued by confidence and knowing in the past and has slowly worked toward something more balanced and still has a ways to go, I think I would guess that you are a better listener than I am. You aren't caught up in your mind trying to um, look at how the other person is wrong, um, and thinking about what you're going to say to the other person before they finish talking, therefore not actually listening to what they're saying. So I'm going to guess that you're probably good at listening, would be my guess. I would put it this way, you're probably a better listener than I am. Let's see. That was me before, now flipped over, trying to grasp it all. I don't know what you mean. I hope I didn't cause you to flip over like that. That would be strange. And I'm not exactly what flipped. Trying to grasp it all. So before, I'm going to assume this is what you mean. And there is a link at the top of the chat if you want to hop in and speak. I would have to leave if a fire breaks out. Grasping the meaning of you, me, and the world. Yeah, it's a good thing. I don't think you can. I don't know. It's a good thing to try to grasp, but once you've got it, maybe it's a delusion, right? So it might be good to just be trying to grasp the meaning always, or at least once you get a hold on it, be willing to consider that you can get a better grasp, right? We definitely are limited. I think that's why we need each other. If we're going to try to do anything difficult, we need help. As an individual, your capacity to do good work is very limited. There is no human that ever did a lot of good work, or maybe even any good work, without the help of others. And I'm even thinking about the parents, right? If you were just plopped into this world as a baby and ignored, you wouldn't make it very far, right? So, and then the more people that are working together to try to help each other, it's like the more good work you can the more good fruit, the more good work can emerge from that. That's why I went from hero to hero LFG, looking for group. It's because of that realization. I actually had an invention for a perpetual motion machine, and it taught me this importance of cooperation. Hey, Michael.
Hello. Hear me okay?
Good day, sir.
What's that?
Oh, I was. I got some feedback in a DM about my about someone else's perspective of me, and so it was. I wanted to talk about that a little bit. That subject of getting feedback. It's related to the subject of honesty and trustworthiness. It's related to how we're supposed to interact with other people, right? And then as a husband, I'm sure you and your wife probably end up having those kinds of conversations as well, where you receive feedback or give feedback. But the feedback
Yeah.
I received, basically, I was told that, and most people who would have been told this would probably just ignore me, right? So I'm the kind of person who can receive the kind of feedback that if anyone else had received it, they would have just ignored the other person, right? And then that can be mistaken for like some type of a mental health issue. Like, oh, you froze, Michael. So that's what's on my mind. I might have a mental health issue. I wouldn't even say might. I'm sure I do. I'm sure we all do.
Well, yeah. I don't know what is perfect mental health. You know, that's probably a difficult thing to define.
Well, if we're in like a fallen world, if you start to, um, and Eve Gilbert says hi, Michael. But if you're kind of in a fallen world, and if you are working to become a better person, I would imagine that you would become something of a stranger or like something on the fringe, and then because you're on the fringe, you might actually be perceived as someone who is disabled. So, like, if you like, can you go to the fringe so far that you are unable to uh, have success at accomplishing goals and being part of a community, right? Um, and then yeah, so that's the kind of the perception of me is that I might be that kind of person. For example, in this little corner, you know, I'm definitely not a popular person, and so then the idea would be that the there's things I say and there's things about me that make me weird that would cause me not to be a popular person, right? And it might be
Well,
some kind of disability, like medically diagnosable disability, which I don't know how much that doesn't weigh heavily on my mind because I don't trust authorities. But yeah, some people trust authorities and would say he has this diagnosis, and that causes all kinds of perceptions.
yeah. Well, I think. I would say your presence in our corner is very good to me because um, if you weren't here, I would be further towards the edge of whatever the norm is. But I mean that in a good way because I
Yeah,
think that there's because there's so much of the cerebral and the abstract, and you and I understand the necessity to actually solve a problem, and
yeah,
sometimes you know it's, I don't know if you saw that thing he did about the triangle of truth. We can do something good, fast, or cheap, but you can only pick two out of the three. So there's always trade-offs, and people don't like that, or they just never consider cheap and fast as being as important. But something's got to be cheap and fast, like you know. Otherwise, you're just going to get tired of building cathedrals all day. That was the metaphor that I used.
yeah. It's a good point. I'm a site reliability engineer now, and so in reliability, you have a trade off between velocity and reliability. And Mark Lefevre and I talked about it. It's basically this triangle you're talking about. The cost is deeply coupled to either one, right? But yeah, I'm okay with moving slow. Uh, I'm okay with that.
Well,
As far
it's
as
totally
go ahead.
dependent. It's totally dependent on the task, on what it's for.
Yeah, if your kid's running out in the road, you don't move slow, right?
You know,
Whatever, something like there's definitely situations where you don't want to be slow. I was, um, yeah, I listened to conversations, and it's like this little corner. It's like I'm so far off on this little corner that I don't even feel like I'm part of this little corner. I'm closest to Grimgriz as far as big, like I would say, like
Mhm.
how many people are actually like, skeptical of religious text that are communicating or have a YouTube channel, right? And that, so I put Grimgriz and myself in that category. And then I heard Chad say that he doesn't really want to talk about theology that much. But let's see. Watching you guys in TLC makes it more
Yeah.
understandable and more manageable. So thanks. Thank you. That's a nice thing to say.
Well, I appreciate that. If I'm contributing that, that was a little bit of my goal.
I just know that conversations are important, and I was I went looking for people to have conversations with, and I think your wife may have mentioned like that you get to go here and have these conversations that you might not be able to have anywhere else, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was it your
Mm-hmm.
wife who mentioned that?
Yeah.
I think it, but
I mean, well, yeah, it is interesting, that the internet allows us to find the most specific uh, points of common interest between people that are not that would be much more difficult just out in the wild, I guess you could say. But sometimes, but
right,
that can be limiting too, because sometimes like you know uh, if I like we go to a like a family Bible study once a week, or one every other week or whatever. I think about like we're reading something, having a discussion, and something from like this corner pops in, and I'll have to think like, oh, okay, let's see, they haven't seen that. I can't say, how Jordan Peterson explains this one thing about Pinocchio, like that was the thought I had. So then I had to like back up and try to like explain it, like
or the other day
uh,
I told my wife, I said,
and
yeah, I was talking to Michael Sartori, and she's like, I don't know Michael. It's like, yeah, you don't know Michael.
yeah,
You are just I've some you are lagging a little bit, so I did interrupt you, and it's just it's just a matter of the technology making this somewhat awkward. What are tears of joy? I think we have different. I've experienced tears of joy. There's moments in movies and books when I experience it, and
yeah,
then but
I'm
other people don't experience
on
it either.
cell phone data, so
Yeah, maybe you hit your rate your limit for the month. They're throttling your speed, Michael. Try turning off your video. See if that helps.
yeah. Tears of joy. That's what happens at the end. If it's
I can't hear you very well, Michael.
okay, I might have to move on to this location. Well, maybe I'll hop off and come back on in a bit. We'll see.
All right. Yeah. Try a new location when you're somewhere else. But, whew. What are tears of joy? I guess that would be an interesting thing to know about people is what causes the person um, to have tears of joy. So What are tears of joy? All right, Chad, you're welcome to hop in and tell us what gives you tears of joy. I did have some tears of joy the other day listening to a conversation on this corner. Um, I think there's a story that I tell myself. We all have stories that we tell each other or we tell ourselves, and so if you are participating in a story and you're seeing the story come together in the way that you hope that it comes together, then for me that can cause tears of joy, right? Um, so I wish I could. I'm barely able to listen to the video. Bad reception. Yeah, I feel like this medium is good, except when you need that bandwidth. So it would be cool if there was an audio only version. Let's go back. Eve Gilbert, staring into the abyss because you want to know and grasp it all has some consequences. I think I actually gave up on that at some point. I'm pretty sure Chad gave up on that as well. Like it might, yeah. The question you have to ask yourself is eventually is like, can it be done? And how useful is that? And like, you know, is there something like, has anyone ever done it and come back from it and it have improved their life or anyone else's lives around them? Like, is it a fruitful endeavor? It's kind of what I ask myself. I think maybe Chad would have a similar perception as myself. Paruensul Kim. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. In my very limited experience, crying with joy seems to be more of an overwhelming of emotion. Just speaking personally, I feel myself well up when I consider heroes and sacrifice. Yeah, I think it's like that's sounds true for me as well. But I would add that meaningful sacrifice, like if it's a meaningful sacrifice, then it can, do this, right? And I'll point back at this convective heat engine thing. Like I've sacrificed a lot of mornings and built a website for a friend, and if that actually comes into fruition and that would be very meaningful. But let's see. So yeah, it's nice sacrificing with the hope that it will bring about the good, and then it's even nicer when it actually does. Maybe that's a little different, but it's the closest I've experienced. Yeah, I mean, when I'm watching movies or reading books with heroes, it happens. I'll go back to the previous one. But for me, it also can happen in real life if I'm participating in the story. So like if I learn something and transform as an individual, and then I'm able to take the thing that's transformed and then actually see it be good in the world, right? And what's even cooler is if you know that it doesn't even like build up your ego. For example, at work, I can go off to someone and send them a message and give them the thing that causes them to become a better person, them to make a better action, and the people around them end up doing better, and the organization as a whole does better. And then I don't even get recognized for it. To me, that's like an example where it's meaningful if it's because it's so different than who I was. So a personal transformation can do that as well. Like if you sacrifice who you were, some ideal that you had or some story you told yourself in order to become someone new, then you're able to see the results of you becoming someone new in order to have a better impact in the world. But could be delusional. I'm sweating. I did go for a jog, so it's not all stress sweat. I'm going to turn off my camera for just a sec. Ooh. I've found sacrifice, done not with a certainty of an outcome, but rather with the hope of one, is more impactful. I think the faith component has more meaning to me as opposed to that's an interesting word, one that has a causal logic. I think the faith component has more meaning to me as opposed to one that has a causal logic. I actually do better with text because my brain is a little bit slower. If I was talking to Mark Lefevre and he just threw those words at me, I would not catch them. I would only catch them once I went back and listened a second time. Sorry, I ran out of characters. I guess the question for me would be, have you had the faith component, doing the thing with the faith component, have you seen the outcome from it? And yeah, I guess the faith component is meaningful. And then I just wonder how much success you've had in doing your sacrifice. Like you have some kind of a goal or a story, and you do a sacrifice with faith or hope, something like that. And then how much success do you have in your actions contributing toward the story you tell yourself or the goals that you have? That would be, yeah, my question would be, how much success have you had? Because I think when you have success, that's also meaningful. And we could talk about whether the faith component is more or less meaningful than the actions contributing toward the story or the goal that you're aiming for. But interesting though. Why is it so powerful to watch 500 people perform a popular rock song, whereas it's not that moving to hear the original song or just one person perform? So I think that, first of all, this would be meaningful for Chad and for other people like Chad. And then it won't be meaningful for some people. That's like, we're different. But I definitely, yeah, I think I get it, right? I think I actually know what Chad is talking about here. And then is it rhetorical? Is it a rhetorical question? But Yeah, one time I was with some friends, actually family, and we put on dance music and we started like playing this game. And I helped actually invent the game. It was like a duck duck goose game where we were all around a fire, and you would one person would be dancing, going around the circle to the dance music, and then would tap a person. And once you tap to the person, that person got to invent a move, and then everyone in the circle started doing the move that got invented. And then the person who invented the move would go around the circle doing their thing, and then you just kept playing this duck duck goose game. And it was kind of just a almost, I would use the word psychedelic experience. No alcohol, nothing. It was sober. The parents of the kids came out and they were worried. They thought we were doing drugs or something. We were just having so much fun, and we did it for hours, and we were just sore and tired the next day. So it's like with Miyamoto Musashi in the Book of the Five Rings, he talks about the spirit of the thing itself. And so there can be a spirit. And I'm also thinking about the power of the mob. Like this mob, it can be destructive, or it can be producing music. It could be dancing. And yeah, it can feel meaningful to get, possessed by a spirit, like at a football game, all kinds of ways to do it. It can also be very dangerous. So it's very powerful. It can be very meaningful, but it can also be very dangerous. It's real, though. It is real. And I think Chad's talking about that's great about the dancing around the fire. It was a really cool game that we played, and I've never played. I did it one time, never done it again before. Let's see. I'm having trouble articulating through text here, so maybe it was meant to be, since I have to really nail down what I'm trying to say. Something I do is record myself. I've been doing it for over 10 years now. And so I have lots of private recordings. And for me, that's helpful. Writing is helpful, but also practicing saying it can also be helpful. Saying it out loud. It also can help you. For me, I'm an introverted type and have had so many experiences where I say the thing that makes people angry and they perceive it as being mean. So I've practiced delivery of my thoughts for a decade, so that I can now do something like this and hopefully avoid being thrown up on a cross or something like that. Are tears merely baptism? I don't know, Mr. I don't like theology. So baptism, Chad could probably go look up the etymology of the word baptism, connect it to some stories. Let's see. I think, in a sense, my family's whole story is a sort of faith-based sacrifice. They moved here with no assurances, with the belief that it would lead to a better life. They left behind friends, family. Yeah. Yeah, that's a big one. Um, there are big sacrifices and there are smaller sacrifices. And then there's even like personal sacrifices, like non material sacrifices, sacrificing who you were, for example, sacrificing relationships. Um, I tend to be the one who pushes people away with my words. So I haven't really had to cut off many people. It's not something I'm used to. I guess I do it when I change jobs. And yeah, I do miss that's a part of our human nature. We do become attached and we miss we definitely become sad when we lose those things that we had a bond with. They left behind friends, family, their entire lives in hopes that it would be better. Here being in America. Yeah. There's a lot of opportunity. I would always have to push back a little on the nationalism a little bit, but I love the country, and when I say that, I mean the biodiversity and the natural resources, first and foremost, and then yeah, we're it could be much worse. There's many places in the world where it could be much worse. It's like, do you want to go live in the desert, or do you want to go live alongside a river with lots of fish and fruit trees? Yeah, no, I'm guessing that, yeah, it's a big sacrifice. Sacrificing the relationships with all the people that you knew. But like, I think you have to be willing to do sacrifices. People live in Vegas. Yeah, that's where I want. That's where I want to build the convective heat engine. I want one in Vegas to provide water. But Jason Delport's the engineer for that thing, and he doesn't necessarily. He wants good, like, I think it was a good Christians to be a part of the city, which is part of the convective heat engine. No fires at work. I like talking about the things that really can help, like in your marriage, as a spouse, and as a parent, or as a coworker, as a neighbor. Those are the things I like, because I know I have a lot to learn. And so, let's see, what's your favorite thing about the emergence of the just chatting format? It's a good question. I like being able to get people's tone of voice. So, and I think it's better than just, I got more than one favorite thing. The favorite thing, tone of voice is so important. When Jacob says things in text, um, I interpret those. My brain interprets those things differently than when I hear him say things, and I've been aware of this for a long time. That's why, I try not to become too defensive when I encounter feedback that is difficult. But that's my favorite. Second favorite, you didn't ask for second favorite. Like, I like that separate from Discord. You don't have to be a member of Discord to participate. And then like that's closely coupled to, I do like that it's public and it's available like publicly. It's not like it's a private Discord room. Like those are, I'm sure those are good. I don't participate in those often. And there's things that can happen there that might not happen here. But those are three things that come to mind about what's happening with these just chatting. It goes deeper than just relationships. Their entire way of life, of being, habits, and customs. Like imagine you found yourself in a land where all the things you learned from childhood didn't apply. I kind of feel that way. Being raised by my father. Yeah, I feel like a stranger in a stranger in a not so strange land, but just with strange people and culture. Like I look at what everybody's doing and it's just so strange. It's like, at one point I was recording myself with my shirt off and I had someone like give me the feedback that I should put a shirt on. Right. It's like so many strange people about strange ways of doing things. But I know that, so I kind of understand just because I had a very strange father. He would call himself a bohemian. I remember hearing stories that he had furniture made out of, he would take all the beer that had been drunk and would put it in beer cases and make furniture out of it back whenever he got back out of the Navy. So a bohemian lifestyle. I remember him stopping at a trash, there's big dumpsters on the side of the road, and he would stop and like he jumped up on the dumpster and looked over and he saw something and he said he's like, that's a good one. And he jumped into the dumpster and like all of a sudden there's a couch coming up out of the dumpster and he gets it over there and throws it over and gets it in the back of the truck. We take it home and we put it in the living room and we put a sheet over the couch. And then I remember like he would get mad at us for putting our feet on the couch, like this couch from the dumpster. But anyway, I mean, none of my friends had a dad like that. Let's see. Your sensibilities, your common sense, how you treat people is largely no longer applicable. I feel that stranger in a strange land. Myself, quite often, my upbringing was not conventional by many conventions. Your dad sounds like quite a character. Yes, he is. My dad introduced me to Carlos Castaneda and the teachings of Don Juan. He encouraged, like a lot of people are given like the holy book to, you are brought into a religion. My dad, it seemed that he treated the teachings of Don Juan as his holy book. And when he gave it to me, he impressed upon me that it was important. And so that really shaped me. The warrior's way, plants being sacred. Yeah, I'm very, how many people in this little corner were given the holy book and it was Carlos Castaneda. With Mescalito. If you don't know what Mescalito is who you meet when you go off into the desert and you eat buttons off of a peyote cactus. And you meet Mescalito and I think Carlos ended up turning into a crow and flying. Like it's pretty wild. As far as the warrior's way, it means be impeccable, right? to be impeccable. Very different than Jesus. The teachings of Jesus are very different than the teachings of Don Juan. So, like, I would say, from the perspective of the teachings of Don Juan, Jesus may have lost, right? But I'm not going to say Jesus lost. It's a good trick, by the way. Yeah, what a strange initiation. Well, what was interesting is that it caused me, so, I'm surrounded by people who will drink alcohol, smoke marijuana, go pick mushrooms off cow poop, psilocybe cubensis, and most people are not taking it seriously. Like, they don't treat it the way that Carlos Castaneda and Don Juan would treat it. And so meanwhile, so I'm sitting there, I'm the weird guy who would take the marijuana, and I would say a prayer that this marijuana would allow us to grow and learn and become better people. Right? I was the 17-year-old doing that, who would throw in a prayer right before we smoked a blunt, right? And seriously, like, not joking, just like going into the experience wanting to learn and grow into a better human being, and using the plants in that way, with that intent. So, not necessarily sometimes idolatry, but not all the time. Sounds exactly like a buddy of mine. Yeah, one time I had I was with this crew, and we had a blunt, and I was like, how much did we pay for this? And I think it ended up being like $20 or something. And then I was like, how much money, how long would it have taken for someone, an average person in India, to have paid for this? And I'm like, I think many of those people make less than $1 a day. And I was like, I just wanted to change the perspective. It's like, we are about to burn through this thing that we just spent $20 on, and there are people in the world who are struggling. So I was that guy. The buzzkill, the party pooper. I'm the party pooper. No fires at work. This guy would carry a Bible with him to do shrooms. He's living that holy fool life without realizing it, I think, but he's living. Carry a Bible with him to do shrooms. I don't know if he's disrespecting the Bible, but I know that I did. So I'm pretty sure that I rolled up a joint in Bible paper. Pretty sure I ate some Bible papers. I definitely disrespected people's holy book. And did things like that just to I think I liked poking people and getting them to snap out of their frame, I guess would be what our little corner calls it. I enjoyed getting people to step outside of their frame. You'd hear people say, dude, I can't believe you did that. The holy fool. Yeah, interesting. Let's see. Does the holy fool know he's the holy fool? And then how important is the fool, right? Like, even if you know you're the holy fool, like I feel like that word fool is, it's similar to the idea of someone being disabled or having a mental disorder or mental health disease. Like, I feel like, yeah, how important are they? And maybe they aren't treated with the respect they deserve. I feel like our society does not know how to identify people who are deserving of respect and attention. But let's see. Now you're just emulating St. John eating the book in a twisted way. I don't think so. Probably not. We need lots of holy fools fast. Holy fools fast. So I can't be a holy fool because I am a father. So I don't, like, for me, the plants, like the sacred plants in Alabama, if I were to do these sacred plants according to my religion, right, that is actually not a religion because it's not in a text, like legally, which is a big issue that a lot of people are ignoring about the legal definitions and the non-legal definitions and how our language confuses people. But yeah, if I were to get caught with the cannabis plant, I could end up in jail and have my children taken from me. And I could, like, I like to say it, I could have my children stolen from me and I could be locked in a cage for growing a plant. Yeah. Like, for me, that's the biggest, when we talk about being on the wrong side of history, that is a big one. I know people would say abortion is up there as a topic, but abortion's like kind of this direct thing, and there's actually people that say the indirect effects of abortion are good. I've heard the arguments, just like you could perhaps, like I was listening to Paul Vanderklay talk about, he's shining a light on some of this. He's paying attention to the transgender topic, and the idea that it's a contagion. And I was thinking, like, I know people's perspectives. There is a perspective where you don't want stupid people to reproduce. And perhaps those who are tricked into not being able to reproduce are among the stupid people who should not be reproducing. So this is a perspective that people can have in order to try to create the world they want. Similarly, being able to legalize abortion can have effects 20 years down the road where the crime rate changes, right? So this is the way a lot of people think. It's called consequentialism, and justifying the means for the ends, and it's dangerous territory. Oh, let's see. I think JBP categorizes the protagonist of Dostoevsky's The Idiot as a holy fool, perhaps an archetypal holy fool. Makes me wish I had read that one. I have not. I wonder who is a holy fool that comes to mind for me. I guess what comes to mind for me is that the like, if you read the Bible and you read about prophets and you read about maybe John the Baptist, you end up with people who are who look like a holy fool. But I need to shut my door. My family is back. We can hear them in the background. Oh, well, let's see. Also, a utilitarian argument. No, yeah, utilitarianism is consequentialism, is the means the ends justify the means, and all dangerous. It doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means that you have to be careful, because you can begin to justify all kinds of terrible things with good intentions, right? Like Hitler, he seems to me to be some type of like this, who tried to justify things. That's what I'm reminded of Scott Adams quoting, I forget, who did he quote? There's a song. It's called "The Good versus the Good." It's like, it's not a fight about good versus evil. It's and it's not a fight about evil versus evil. It's actually a fight between the good versus the good. You have people who think they are good fighting other people who think they are good. That's what's happening. And almost everyone is wrong, and we aren't good at identifying those who would be most helpful, right? We aren't good at that. Let's see. The opposite of utilitarian is like I think, was it deontological ethics? But like, so you would have a code, you would have your own code on morality, which you avoid certain things. But those can be dangerous as well. Solzhenitsyn talked about the role of ideology as sort of justifying doing evil, reframing evil things as good. Well, I try to, so I'm going to point back at convective heat engine, because we can ask ourselves, it's like, are we doing good? And what's the most good we could be doing? And is talking about this kind of philosophy, is it similar to what Chad was rightfully, I think, complaining about? And he wasn't complaining, but observing about how people talk about theology. Is it good? Or are we being distracted from doing the good? So that's why I mentioned convective heat engine, because it's an example of me trying to do good at the largest scale to provide clean water for everyone on earth, right? For me, it's more important than like the Christian mission to teach people about Jesus Christ, right? Right? Like we could compare what we think, like the biggest story in our mind, and like mine has something to do with, is very rooted in providing clean water to everyone on earth. Like that's a fruit of my story. And we could compare stories, and then we could really consider how our pursuit of participating in our story plays out in some fantasy land. Let's see. For a man to do evil, he must first be convinced it is good. That's a good point. That's a quote from this. I'm guessing that's a quote from Solzhenitsyn. Right. And then, but you can do some twists. Like in this, when you start doing these twists, you will get pushback, but you can do twists, and you could ask yourself, well, what would have been the outcome if Hitler had not done what he'd done, right? So you can ask yourself that question, and we can't know, right? But we can't know, right? We don't know the outcome. It's why it's kind of hard to look back at history. We all tell ourselves a story about who is good and who is evil. And large amounts of people start accepting a story about what is good and what is evil, and it doesn't mean that it was actually the thing that everybody believes it was. Um, what are some potential unintended consequences of the conductive heat engine if it comes into reality? It's a good question. It is a good question. So when you, so the convective heat engine is going to extract water out of the atmosphere. It's going to be doing that. Basically, you can turn it on and off. And so when you start extracting water out of the atmosphere and pulling heat, surface heat up into the atmosphere, it's going to change the whole world. And then and the idea is we'll build thousands of these. Like, we're not building one Tower of Babel. We're going to build thousands of Towers of Babel. But, and basically Tower of Babel could have been a psyop, guys, like, for real. The enemy could have done us all the scripture could have been a psyop by the enemy. But yeah, there's always trade-offs. There's always unintended consequences for sure. And it's a really good question. Steelman, a position against it. The position against it is that there's quite a few positions against it. There's a position against it from like a market perspective. If you're a free market capitalist, and that might just be the difficulty of it. It's going to be hard to monetize this thing. It's going to be very hard to make money on it. So that's one thing. From an environmental perspective, it is going to change environments, right? So if you care about the environment and how it is today and the creatures, all the creatures in the environments today, and you worry about the toad that's going to die, it's like you're going to change the environment and there will be consequences. So there's all kinds of arguments against it. And you just have to weigh the negatives and the positives. The positives would be that we provide clean water and energy to every person on Earth, lifting, a rising tide lifting all boats. That's going to take a lot of time. And I'd say my biggest position against it is the difficulty in doing it. Because I imagine it to be something that either requires government, which is never a great situation, or it's just going to be a large scale effort. It's going to have to, the monetizing it part of it is going to be very hard to deal with. We don't know how to monetize something that's going to provide clean water and energy for everyone in the community. It's going to be very difficult. It's a good question. I'm going to think about it some more. If done on a large scale, would it affect weather patterns? Oh, yes, it would affect weather patterns. If it was done on a large enough scale, you would actually see no clouds in the sky. If on a large enough scale. And then where these things exist, there would be no clouds in the sky. I think Jason even thinks that there was prophecy in the Bible that talks about these it's like something about a temple, something about a resurrected body, something about the snakes, which are part of the coils, and the crown, the golden crown at the top. Like, he thinks this is connected, but yes, it will affect weather patterns. And the question in my mind would be, like, and I asked Jason, like, we could put these things along the coastline and it could essentially absorb a hurricane. So a hurricane comes in and it disappears, right? You could also put these things, I think it would take like less than 40 of these to keep the Mississippi River flowing based on my calculations. Like, if we built 40 of them, we did a quick back of napkin calculation, me and Jason. You build 40 of them and we could keep the Mississippi River flowing during a drought. It has huge implications for the availability of food and the price of food. Like, could be a good thing. Let's see. So first they take our stars, now they take our clouds. Yes. Yeah, that can happen. That can happen. So take away your hurricanes and your tornadoes, take away your clouds. there's actually an underground component to this as well. It could also, like I've thought about it. It might take away your earthquakes and your volcanoes as well. Um, if you start building these things, enough of them, we could take away your hurricanes, your tornadoes, your volcanoes, your earthquakes, and provide clean water and clean energy. Yeah, terrible thing, man. Terrible thing. Did our relationship with astronomy or the stars drive our evolution of sight? I mean, I could answer a question with a question. I didn't pay attention to these conversations about that. I feel like Karen Wong has talked about it. Jordan Peterson has talked about it. I remember Terrence McKenna talking about possibility of like psychedelics having an impact on our evolution. There's a lot of stories we can tell ourselves. I don't know. I think we need to be able to say I don't know sometimes. So it would reduce rainfall. It would destroy plant life, reduce herbivore population, destroy ecosystems if done on large enough scale. So what it would do, yes, it would reduce rainfall. So the idea for the way we would do this is we would actually put it in the places where there is no rainfall, right? We would go on the edges of the deserts where we're already having issues with drought. And all these are just ideas that we could say no to. But and then what you're doing is you're able to terraform a desert, right? So, but yeah, what's the side effect? If you transform a desert into a tropical forest, what is the consequence? So it's a good question. You can also turn these off though. So when it's running, it will be, pulling moisture out of the air. But if you turned it off, it would not be pulling moisture out of the air. So the one argument I would have for this is kind of like air conditioning. We're in I'm in a house with air conditioning right now. Did not grow up with that actually. But we're able to use air conditioning, for example, to control a climate in order to have a more predictable supply of food. Think greenhouses, for example. So when you depend on nature, it's like it becomes unpredictable. You can't predict the temperatures. You can't predict the availability of water. You can have crops that are good one year and bad the next. Similarly with wildfires, it's unpredictable unless you do controlled burnings, right? So there's a way that humans can interface and interact with nature in order to bring predictability. And that's what we've been doing, right? That's when we eat an apple, that apple is this process of humans trying to make our food predictable, right? That's so something we have to be careful about, but we've been doing it for a long time. And it can be done well so that we have a predictable, reliable supply of, well, that's the argument, right? And there needs to be very smart people talking about it. First, the first thing that would need to happen is we would need to make sure it can be built. And we haven't been able to have anyone tell us it can't be built. I'd like to have a 3D model that we could look at. And then there's a lot of questions that need to be answered. It's a mega project. Well, I see a huge problem with elimination of those things. What happened when the engine fails and we get a flood of clouds and volcanoes? We could not be prepared for the reintroduction of nature. Yeah. Yep. So if you don't have redundancy, then you have a problem. This is why a spaceship has triple redundancies for the life support systems. So yeah, if you have a single point of failure, and this is actually my area of expertise, or it's an area where I have more expertise than most people you will speak with. but yeah, single points of failure, we want to avoid those. And yeah, there's definitely a need to be cautious. And we already have those today, right? And we already are missing a lot of the redundancies today in our government and our economic system. So when Jacob talks about the threat of civil war, when people talk about the threat of switching off fossil fuels, and the threat of starvation, like we have single points of failure, which could be seen, for example, what happened with COVID. And those are dangerous. We do need to have redundancies. We don't have very good leaders. It's a major trade-off to consider. Yes. And it's one of those things where I think that the convective heat engine would have to be tuned, and it would have to be kept in tune. And it would not, it would have to be this thing that moves at night, mornings, evenings. It essentially has cells that can move. You could also have your coils moving within the towers, but if you don't tune it properly, it won't work, is my understanding. Just as a knee-jerk reaction, I am very against things that affect the ecosphere on a large scale. Not telling you it's a bad idea, but it kind of makes me worried. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I guess should be worried. Exactly. We definitely should be worried. There are plants, animals that depend on the ambient moisture in deserts to survive. So terraforming a desert would be killing off the current ecosystem and make a new one. Yes, it would. It would. There are also people who are suffering and don't have clean water. So my aunt, she's a veterinarian and she loves animals. And one time I'd said something that came off as mean. And you guys would probably understand this as well. But it's similar to me talking to the people about the smoke a blunt, that, hey, we're about to just burn through $20 and there's people on the other side of the planet who make $1 a day. But I mean, what's more important? The humans who don't have clean water, or the lizards? I mean, I love all. I care about lizards, but I do care about humans as well, more than lizards. And I must point out that all biosphere experiments have failed spectacularly. Yes. Yes. It would be nice to it would be nice if there was a mechanism by which an idea like this could receive the attention of people who care about climate change, for example, or people who care about world hunger, for example. So it's very hard. What I've noticed is if you ever try to go find people who are pretending to be serious about an issue, and you come to them with ideas for solutions, you will usually get ignored. That's my experience. Just try it out. That's the experiment you can run. Go find someone trying to be serious. You can even do it with Paul VanderKlay. You can do it with anyone. You can begin to get a measure of how serious people are about their goals. Discussion makes me think of E.M. Forster's The Machine Stops. Well worth the read if you haven't. A short story from 1915 and available for free. Machine Stops. So sometimes I text myself notes. So I'll just text myself. Let's see. Bizani, you're welcome. Anyone's welcome to hop in. The link is at the top of the chat. Let's see. Do y'all ever text yourself? I've got my notes. I could read my notes to you. Bazzani recommends E.M. Forster. Forster. The machine stops. Interesting. Yeah, my main point on this has more to do with what are we paying attention to? What could we be paying attention to? And then what are kind of like core, like universal problems? So that's what I'm really interested in. Like I don't necessarily think, yeah. The question is for example, John Vervaeke has a lot of knowledge about cognitive science, and then you know what is he ignoring, for example, and how serious is he, and what can he work on? How can we get better at accomplishing our goals? Let's see. I'm interested in the suppression of resources and corruption in places like Mexico, and if those vanish, a place like America could vanish. The suppression of resources and corruption in places like Mexico. I don't know what this means, Chad. Like it would be nice if every community had just an abundant supply of water and fruit. Like it seems like a really good design for a city to build your city in such a way that there is just an abundance of water and fruit. It's when you don't have access to your necessities, you are more easily controlled. You have like people who want power will not benefit from humans having access to an abundance of what they need. People who want power get more power by making sure that you have a dependency upon those who control the resources. Let's see, the whole climate change crowd is blind by money, notoriety, propaganda, take your pick. Well, they are blind. Like I tried to reach out to quite a few. But you could, it's also, there's blindness that is understandable as well. Like I mentioned, sometimes I do not communicate effectively because I'm blind to my audience. You can be someone who's just got your head looking, paying attention, you're focused on something and you're ignoring everything else. It happens. It's happened to me. So I'm sure it happens to some people in the climate change crowd. So, I mean, the way you deal with that is you have to be able to practice, bringing your attention back out and looking around and reassessing. It's like, should I be paying attention to that thing? Like theocracy? Or what is it? Not theocracy. That's what we have. Theology. That's what I meant to say. Send myself notes all the time. Good practice. My practice would be better if I was more fastidious on following up on them. Yeah. There's what is that? Salience landscape or relevance realization. It's like we take notes. So one practice, my wife and another guy I know named Rami, one practice is to go through your notes periodically and condense them, right? You have to kind of reevaluate, remember and reevaluate. And I say my wife and Rami because it's something I could do as well, but I don't. It means they basically live exactly where we live, yet they seem to have less access to clean water and other resources. And to me, that seems to be very convenient for Americans. Right. There is like a natural resources thing, And I do know Mexico does have natural resources. But yeah, corruption. Like if you are like, you have to put yourself like as the enemy. Like I love watching movies and paying attention to the enemy. I love a good villain. I love a good villain. Um, and you and you have to understand why the villain does what they do, right? And so if you are the villain, like and you won't even see yourself as the villain. You say, I have been given this responsibility to provide for peace, right? And so there are people in the world who have this mindset. I'm calling them the villains, and they will they will do things in order to make sure that others will depend on them some way, right? Directly or indirectly, so that they can maintain their power. Because if they lose their power, then it can get into the hands of someone who is incompetent because they see themselves as being most competent. Now they're wrong. There's things that if I could get the attention of the people who are the leaders of the world, I could perhaps teach them a better way. But I'm pretty sure this is what they're doing. Like I think if I got Satan's ear, I could teach Satan a few things. Let's see. By fruit, do you mean like apples, oranges, etc.? Yes. Yeah, so I've been into fruit. Fruit Gardener's Bible, and I got fruit trees. I just started getting into fruit, but there's people who started growing fruit and in the 1800s, and there'll be a piece of property with a fruit tree, and then someone, decades later will come in and buy the property, and they've got a fruit tree, right? And it's like, if you're going to pick what trees to grow, why aren't we interested in good fruit? Like, and I say that abstractly, like I really do. But it's like, there's all kinds of trees that have been planted and that are growing, and there's a decision being made about what trees get planted, and there are people who really think that planting fruit trees would be very good. Like if you can plant a fruit tree and take care of it for a few years, maybe a decade, and even forget about it for decades, and then come back and that thing is still able to produce fruit, and maybe you can do cuttings and take the I think they call it the scion, the cuttings, and you put it into the rootstock. It's like that's an investment. That's an investment in the future. And I'm kind of lazy, so if I'm going to plant something, it's like I kind of want to plant something that can take care of itself, right? That I don't have to sit there and tend to it and give it all my attention. I want it to be able to just be self-sufficient as much as possible. That's what I really like. THC infused apples. You have to get the entourage effect. So not just THC, you need every cannabinoid. And if you didn't know, go look up Phoenix Tears and look up cannabinoids cure cancer, right? Like this war on drugs has a lot of consequences when the creator of everything has given us these plants, these amazing plants that I've been taught to treat as sacred. And we just so happen to have plants that cure cancer. And we have plants that can be self-sufficient and just produce fruit. Like, fucking amazing, right? But if you grow some of these plants, you will be locked in a cage. I know it takes a lot of work. But yeah, imagine if you're the villain and there's this plant that cures cancer, and there's this plant that just provides food for people. and water. Like an apple has so much water in it. All right. I've got a small orchard of cherry and peach trees growing right now in my yard. I'm a little envious. I have some work to do. Um, that's why I'm starting to learn. Um, Getting into this can be like I was planning on doing apples and pears for now. Um, and I'm expecting apples will take at least 3 years, pears 5. Got to cultivate the soil, and like I said, cultivate the soil. There's a cultivating the soil is important, not just for fruit trees, but like if we are all able to produce fruit, there's something about the soil and cultivating the soil. Let's see, great investment. Yeah, I think so. Ever look into the Amazon as a farm constructed by humans? So I don't know your point, but the so where there is deserts, where there are deserts right now, there could have been rainforest before. So, and then there's a question like, is there a need for deserts? Right? Like, is having a desert just something that is going to always will there always be deserts um, on Earth? It's natural, but does just because it's natural does that mean it's good? I mean, it's natural that if I drink water out of the creek behind my house that I might get sick. I don't know. I don't know your point, but I'm kind of assuming some point that you're trying to make. Already harvested our first crop of peaches last year after about 2 years of tending to them. Peaches, 2 years. I hear that. Yeah, so different fruit have different amount of time before they start producing, and then there's different species as well. Um, but I haven't got into peaches. I need to read this thing more than once. I'm only halfway through one of the books as well. Terra Preta. Sounds like Latin. I'm serious about the Amazon forest as a human constructed farm. Look it up. All right. Let's look it up right now. Amazon human constructed farm. Are you talking about Amazon with Jeff Bezos? I'm just playing. Ancient humans farmed the Amazon too. The Amazon rainforest was profoundly changed by ancient humans. The region's ecology is a product of 8,000 years of indigenous agriculture. That's cool. Yeah. Good point, Chad. I like that. I like that idea that you do good work and you have an understanding of the world. And you, to Michael Sartori's point, it's like you can, there's the triangle of cost, time, and the good. It's like you can actually do some good things that are going to last for generations, right? And working with the earth, natural resources. So I really, yeah, there would be a way there should be a way to transform our deserts into areas that are very productive, producing fruit, and could even persist. Like eventually, to Chad's point earlier, you could take out, say you put a convective heat engine in for 30 years, you could then move it and then leave behind a self-sufficient community with, self-sufficient fruit gardens, for example. I'm getting the Smithsonian Mag, pristine, untouched Amazonian rainforest was actually shaped by humans. Yeah. That is interesting. I'd never heard that. That is interesting, though. Let me it's hard to actually copy and paste text from within StreamYard. I think some theorize that the Saharan desert was good farmland, and over time they bled it dry, resulting in the desert we have today. Might be totally off base, but I'm sure I heard that. Maybe Jerry. Nothing new under the sun, eh? Well, like, I imagine every innovation is just taking what already exists and rearranging it in a way that adds more predictability and complexity, such that the things that exist under the sun can cooperate in ways that had not cooperated previously, right? So, kind of new, kind of old, mixed together. They amended the soil with charcoal and shards of terracotta, IIRC. Yeah, there's quite a bit of knowledge related to how to um, improve and cultivate the earth such that we can, for example, provide clean water, a reliable supply of clean water and food. But they want you to wear a mask. That's more important. And if there's a fire, it would also be important. That's how I get bread on my table. The economy. Let's see. Terra Perita is a man-made soil of the Amazon. We don't know how they did it, but we know they did it. It sounds like just the perception reminds me of the pyramids. We know they did it, but we don't know how they did it. That's maybe we know how they did it now, but yeah, I've heard that. It's interesting there being ancient knowledge that that was lost, and we can maybe assume that could be discovered again, rediscovered. Probably would have something to do with a dependency on our motivations and where our attention is at. Are we watching professional football? Are we discussing theology? Are we listening to Jonathan Pageau? I'd kind of rip on JP a little. I don't give him a lot of attention, but I've heard him say good things. I liked what he said about sacrifice. I listened to Jonathan Pageau because Paul had released some things, and I thought the idea of sacrifice was something very important, and it even is nested in kind of what's happening here. Like, what are we sacrificing? When you focus on anything, you're sacrificing all kinds of other things, and this is why our strengths are with our weaknesses. This is why we have a world where there's people who don't have clean water. I got a dip here. It was a pleasure chatting. Back to work I go, slave to labor that I am. Yes, thank you for coming. I hope you are still there and subscribe, or already are subscribed. All right, I need just a sec. All right. So speaking of more important things, I think my kids built a pile of leaves in the front yard. I think they want me to come out and see them. Probably have a meeting myself to get to. I'm going to, let's see, soil, that Terra Parita. See, it's that big. Aliens. Something to do with orange pills in the soil. Yeah, I guess my closing thoughts, I'm reminded of George Washington Carver. So one of the names I thought about for a son would be Carver, after George Washington Carver. Very important person. Yeah, and what do we value as individuals? What do we value in this little corner? What do we value as a society? Yeah, maybe we would be able to cultivate good people and good soil if we could figure out what we should be valuing. But yeah, I missed having someone else's face here. Thanks, Chad. I appreciate that. Yeah, I want to have a conversation eventually about mental health, and maybe even like the perception of mental health, and maybe even my own mental health. But that might be a private conversation with some people. But I hope you all are well and have a good one. Bye-bye.